Please save me. She whispered those 3 words into a cracked phone screen at 12:17 in the morning, bleeding locked in her own bathroom, while the man she once loved was destroying her front door. And the voice that answered was the one name in Chicago that made grown men go silent. Before we go further, if this story already has your heart pounding, hit that subscribe button right now. Drop the name of your city in the comments below. I want to see exactly how far this story travels. Now let's go. Bella. His voice came through the door like smoke through a keyhole, low-controlled, almost gentle. That was the worst part. Not the screaming. Not the crash of the lamp she had thrown at him 20 minutes ago, the one that had shattered against the living room wall and left a dark stain on the carpet. She would never be able to explain to her landlord. Not even the sound of his fist against the bathroom door, methodical and patient, like a man who had all the time in the world. It was the gentleness. The way. Marcus Hale could lower his voice after chaos, smooth it out like fresh concrete over broken ground, and sound like the man she had fallen in love with 3 years ago. That was what terrified her, because she knew what that voice meant. It meant he thought he had already won. Bella, sweetheart, come on. A pause. I'm not angry anymore, I promise. Isabella Romano pressed her back harder against the cold wall beside the toilet. Her knees were pulled to her chest. Her left hand was wrapped around her phone. The screen cracked down the middle from when Marcus had knocked it out of her hand earlier, and her right hand was pressed flat against the tile floor like she needed something solid to hold on to. The side of her face was throbbing. She didn't need a mirror to know what was there. She could feel it, the swelling heat just below her cheekbone, the way her left eye was already starting to feel heavier than the right. 3 years. She had given 3 years to this man. 3 years of Sunday mornings and dinner parties and weekends at his lake house and photo albums that looked like a love story. 3 years of apologies. 3 years of promises. 3 years of believing every single time that this was the last time. Bella, I swear to God, if you don't open this door in the next 10 seconds, I am going to... He stopped at himself. She heard him breathe. Recalibrate. I just want to talk, he said. That's all. Just talk. She looked at her phone. The crack in the screen ran diagonally from the top left corner all the way down, splitting the display into 2 uneven halves. The screen was still lit. The battery was at 9%. 9%. She had 1 call. Maybe 2 if she was lucky. She opened her contacts. Her thumb hovered. She scrolled past her sister 2 states away, pregnant with her 3rd child. Isabella hadn't told her anything because she didn't want to be the reason her sister's blood pressure spiked at 8 months. She scrolled past her best friend Dana, who would come immediately and who Marcus would destroy for it. She scrolled past her mother, who would tell her to pray about it. She scrolled past co-workers and neighbors and acquaintances who had smiled at Marcus at her birthday dinner last April and told her what a lucky woman she was. She kept scrolling. And then she stopped. A name. A name she had saved in her phone 3 years ago and never intended to use. A name her father had given her sitting across from her at his kitchen table the week before she moved to Chicago, with an expression on his face she had never seen before or since, something between gravity and grief. If you're ever in a situation, he had said carefully, where there is nobody left, where every door you know is closed, where you have tried everything and there is nothing else. He had slid a piece of paper across the table. You call this number. She had looked at it. Dad, who is? Someone who owes me something I never collected. He had folded his hands. Someone who will help you, no matter what. But who is he? Her father was quiet for a long moment. A dangerous man, he had finally said, but the right kind. She had saved the number without asking more questions, because her father was the kind of man who gave important things quietly. She had never called it. She had told herself she never would. She looked at the name on her cracked screen. Adrian Valenti. The bathroom door shook. The cheap lock, the kind that came standard in every apartment building built in the 90s, rattled against its frame. Last chance, Bella. She pressed call. 1 ring. She held her breath. 2 rings. The door shook again. 3 rings. She squeezed her eyes shut. Who is this? Not a question. A statement. A voice like something that had been carved from a material harder than ordinary people were made of. Deep and flat and completely without warmth, the way a winter lake sounds when you tap it and realize the ice goes down a long way. Her voice almost didn't come. My name is Isabella Romano. Silence. Not the silence of someone surprised. The silence of someone processing. Romano, he repeated. Yes. Her throat was tight. My father he knew you. He said you owed him something. He said if I ever needed... The door cracked, not all the way, but the frame shifted. Isabella flinched so hard her elbow hit the wall. If I ever needed help, she finished, her voice fracturing on the last word, I should call this number. And I know it's the middle of the night, and I know you don't know me, and I know I have no right to ask, where are you? Again. Not a question. My apartment, 4177 North Claremont Apartment, 2C, Chicago. Who is in the building with you? My ex, Marcus Hale. She swallowed. He's trying to get into the bathroom. I'm locked in. My phone is about to die. Is there a window in the bathroom? Yes. First floor or above? Third floor. Don't go through the window. A pause so brief she almost missed it. Don't open the door. Don't engage him. He's breaking through the lock. I don't. Isabella. Her name in his mouth stopped her. It was the first time in years that someone had said her full name, and it had sounded like something worth protecting. Stay where you are, Adrian Valenti said. I'm coming. The call ended. The battery hit 7%. The lock on the bathroom door broke. She braced herself. Marcus stood in the doorway. He looked like the man she had met at a mutual friend's rooftop party in June, 3 years ago. Dark hair, tailored shirt. The kind of handsome that photographs well and feels like a compliment when he chooses you. But his eyes were different now. His eyes were the thing that had taken her 3 years to understand. Because Marcus Hale's eyes never changed expression when he was angry. They just got quieter. There you are, he said. He even smiled. It was the smile that turned her stomach inside out, because it was the same smile he used at work at dinner parties in photographs where he held her waist and everyone said goals. Marcus. She kept her voice steady. She did not stand up. She did not move toward him. You need to leave. I need to leave. He repeated it like she had said something entertaining. That's interesting. I need to leave. He tilted his head. From what I remember, I was invited here, which means I'm a guest, and guests don't leave until they're ready. I'm asking you to go, and I'm asking you to stop being dramatic. His voice didn't rise. It never rose. You broke a lamp, Bella. You threw it at my head. Do you know how insane that is? Do you know what people would think if I told them my girlfriend threw a lamp at me? I'm not your girlfriend. Something flickered in his eyes. We've had this conversation. We're done, Marcus. We've been done. I told you that last month and the month before and the month before that. He stepped into the bathroom. Come out of the corner. Don't come in here. Come out of the corner, Bella. His voice dipped lower. Stop making this weird. I called someone, she said. He paused, just for a breath. You called someone, he said. Yes. Who? Someone who's coming here. At 12. He checked his watch, the expensive one she'd given him for his birthday, 25 in the morning. You called someone to come here at 12:25 in the morning. He looked amused. Who does that? What kind of person picks up the phone in the middle of the night because his girlfriend is having... I called Adrian Valenti. The name landed in the bathroom like something dropped from a great height. Marcus Hale went completely still. Not the stillness of confusion. The stillness of a man whose internal architecture just shifted without warning. He stared at her. What did you just say? You heard me. Where did you get that number? His voice was different now, still flat. But the texture had changed the way water changes texture when you realize what's underneath it. Who gave you that number? My father. Something moved across Marcus's face. It was the first real emotion she had ever seen there. Not anger. Fear. Actual naked, uncurated fear. He was gone before she fully processed. He was moving back through the bathroom door, across the living room, out the front door. She heard swing open and shut so fast it might as well have been a reflex. He left his jacket on her couch. He left his keys on her kitchen counter. He didn't even stop to pick up the phone that had fallen out of his pocket during the fight. He was just gone. Isabella sat on the bathroom floor for another 4 minutes. She counted. She didn't know why she counted. Maybe because counting was something she could control. Maybe because after 3 years of not being able to control very much, counting felt like evidence that time was still moving. Then she stood up. She walked out of the bathroom. She sat down on the couch beside Marcus's abandoned jacket, and she waited. He didn't announce himself. No knock. No buzz from the front door intercom. One moment. The apartment was quiet, and the next moment, there was a sound in the hallway. Not a loud sound. Barely anything at all. Just a series of very deliberate silences, where there should have been footsteps. And then her front door opened. She had locked it after Marcus left. She was certain she had locked it. Adrian Valenti walked in like the lock had simply decided to get out of his way. He was taller than she had expected. That was her first thought, which embarrassed her later when she remembered it because of all the things she could have noticed about the man standing in her doorway. At 12:40 in the morning, height seemed like the least important. But he was tall, and he was dressed like a man who had been awake and working long before she called. Dark jacket, dark shirt. The kind of clothing that absorbed the light rather than reflecting it. He was 40 or close to it. His face was not unkind. That was the thing she hadn't expected. She had expected cold. She had expected hard. She had grown up hearing the name Adrian Valenti spoken in certain neighborhoods of Chicago, the way people say the names of things that are powerful and indifferent, like weather, like gravity. She had not expected the way his eyes moved when he entered the room. They went to her face first. Not the broken lamp. Not the overturned chair. Not the state of the apartment. Her face. Her left cheekbone specifically. His jaw tightened. Just once. Just barely. And then his expression went neutral again. "He's gone," she said, because she felt like she needed to explain something. "I told him I called you and he—" She paused. "He left." Adrian looked at the jacket on the couch, the keys on the counter, the phone on the floor. He looked back at her. "Did he hurt you before he left?" "He did." She touched her cheek without meaning to. "This happened earlier, before I called." Adrian crossed the room. He stopped 3 feet away from her, close enough to look far enough to give her the kind of space that felt deliberate. He looked at the bruise. "Can I?" He held up one hand slightly, the gesture of asking permission. She nodded. He tilted her face gently toward the light with 2 fingers under her chin. His hands were warm. She registered that specifically warm, not cold, which contradicted something she couldn't entirely explain. He looked at the bruise for a moment. Then he stepped back. "Nothing broken," he said. "I know. You'll want ice on that." "I know." She looked at him. "You came yourself." "Yes, I expected." She stopped. She didn't know what she had expected. Men who worked for him, maybe. People who handled things. She had not expected him. "Your father," Adrian said, "was not the kind of man whose daughter you send someone else for." She felt that sentence move through her chest. "You knew him well." "Well enough." He looked around the apartment again, then back at her. "You can't stay here tonight." "I know." "Or until this is handled." "Until what is handled?" "Marcus Hale." He said the name the way you describe a structural problem factually without drama as something that needs to be addressed. "He will come back." "I can call the police?" "You can." He said it in a way that contained everything he wasn't saying. She heard it anyway. "He has friends," she said. "He does. Lawyers. Very good ones." She exhaled. "He told me once that if I ever called the police, nothing would happen to him, and everything would happen to me." She paused. "I believed him." "That was not an empty threat." "I know. She looked at him directly. Is this one? He looked back at her. What I told you on the phone, Adrian said. Stay where you are, I'm coming. He held her gaze. That was not a threat. But this whatever you're offering, it comes with a price, doesn't it? She was watching him carefully. That's how it works. Everyone says so. Adrian Valenti doesn't do anything for free. He was quiet for a moment. Not the quiet of someone stung. The quiet of someone who had been told a true thing about themselves and was deciding what to do with it. Your father saved my life, he said finally. 22 years ago in a situation that is too long to explain at 12:40 in the morning. He looked at the jacket on her couch, Marcus's jacket, and something moved behind his eyes. He never asked me to pay it back. He never asked me for anything. A pause. This is not a transaction. There is no price. You called because you had nowhere else to go. He met her eyes. That's reason enough. Isabella Romano had not cried once since Marcus had hit her. She had not cried when she locked herself in the bathroom. She had not cried on the phone. She had not cried when Marcus left, or when the door opened, or when Adrian had tilted her face toward the light with careful hands. But something about those last 3 words, reason enough, did something to the place behind her sternum, where she had been holding herself together for 3 years. She didn't cry, but she came close. Okay, she said. Pack what you need for a few days. Where are we going? Somewhere he won't follow. She went to pack. She moved quickly. She had learned to do that over the past year. The mental filing system of what matters and what can be replaced. The muscle memory of being ready to leave on short notice, which was its own kind of grief that she hadn't let herself examine yet. 10 minutes. 2 bags. She came back to the living room to find Adrian standing by her window, not looking out of it, just standing near it. He turned when she came in. His eyes went to her bags, then back to her face. That's all, he said. That's all. He looked at her for a moment in a way that she couldn't immediately categorize. Not pity, not assessment. Something more like recognition. Okay, he said. She followed him out. He went first. He checked the hallway before he let her step into it. Not obviously, not theatrically. Just a pause and a look that was so practiced it was nearly invisible. In the elevator he stood beside her and didn't speak. She appreciated that. She appreciated that he didn't try to fill the silence with reassurances. She had had enough of reassurances. Outside, there was a car. A dark car, nondescript enough to be invisible and solid enough to be very expensive. The man standing beside it was large and quiet and opened the back door before they reached him. Adrian held it for her. She got in. He got in on the other side. The car pulled away from 41 Webensee in North Claremont at 12:57 in the morning, and Isabella Romano watched her building get smaller through the tinted rear window. She had no idea what she was driving toward. She knew with a certainty she couldn't explain that she was driving away from the worst version of her life. How did you get in? She said after several minutes. Adrian looked over. To your apartment. I locked the door after Marcus left. I know. How did you get in? He looked at her for a moment. The corner of his mouth moved, not quite a smile, but close. The same way I get in everywhere, he said. She stared at him. That's not an answer. No, he agreed. It's not. She turned back to the window. Somewhere in the city behind her, Marcus Hale was doing whatever Marcus Hale did when he was afraid. She realized she didn't care. That was new. For 3 years she had spent enormous amounts of energy caring about what Marcus felt. His moods, his reactions, his silences and explosions, and the careful calculations of what she could say and where she could go, and how she could arrange herself to avoid triggering the version of him she feared. Tonight, for the first time, she didn't care. She thought about what that meant for a long time. She was still thinking about it when the car left the city behind and moved out into the dark edge of the highway that led north toward the kind of places that don't appear on maps people make casually. Toward wherever Adrian Valenti considered safe. Toward a life she hadn't expected. My father, she said carefully. When you said he saved your life. Yes. He never told me. He wouldn't. Was it? She searched for the word. Dangerous. What he did for you. Adrian looked at her. Everything your father did, he said, he did quietly. And everything he did had cost. She looked at her hands. He died 3 years ago. I know. She looked up. You knew. Yes. Did you? She stopped. Did you come to the funeral? Adrian looked back at the road ahead. I stood outside, he said quietly. I didn't think it was my place to be inside. Isabella Romano turned that information over in her mind. The most feared man in Chicago standing outside a church in the cold because he didn't think he had the right to come inside. She didn't say anything, but she thought about it. She thought about it for the rest of the drive. The estate was outside the city. She didn't know by how much she had lost track of the time and the road. But it was set back from the highway by a private drive, and it was large in the way that things are large when they have been designed to protect rather than to impress. She registered guards, cameras, the kind of security that exists when someone has decided that the line between the world outside and the world inside needs to be real. The car stopped. The door opened. Isabella stepped out into air that was colder than the city, the kind of cold that meant they were near water. She looked up. Lake Michigan, she said. Adrian looked at her slightly surprised. North Shore, he said. You can hear it from the east side of the house. She nodded. She didn't know why that mattered. It just did. You'll have your own rooms, Adrian said. 2 of them. There's a woman inside named Rosa who runs the house. She's expecting you. Whatever you need, you tell her. And you? What about me? Where will you be? He looked at her. Here, he said simply. This is where I live. She registered that. She registered that the most feared man in Chicago went home to a quiet house on the north shore of Lake Michigan, where a woman named Rosa ran things and presumably knew where everything was. You don't stay in the city, she said. I work there, he said. I don't live there. She looked at the house. You live alone, she said. Not a question. He looked at her for a moment in the darkness. Until tonight, he said. Then he walked toward the house. She picked up her bags. She followed him. And somewhere behind the estate, beyond the line of trees and the sloping lawn, Lake Michigan moved in the dark in its enormous, indifferent way. Isabella Romano walked into the house of the man everyone feared. She had nowhere else to go, and somehow impossibly for the first time in 3 years, she could breathe. Rosa was already awake when they walked in. That was the first thing Isabella noticed. Not the house, not the warmth that hit her face after the cold outside. Not the sound of her own footsteps on a floor that felt solid and permanent in a way her apartment never had. It was Rosa. A woman somewhere in her mid-60s, short and broad-shouldered with silver hair pulled back, and the kind of face that had decided long ago it was done, apologizing for anything. She was standing in the hallway with a mug of something hot, and an expression that said she had been awake for hours and had no intention of pretending otherwise. She looked at Isabella, not at Adrian, at Isabella, specifically at the left side of Isabella's face, where the bruise was settling into something darker and more honest than it had been an hour ago. Her jaw tightened. Then her expression shifted into something warmer than Isabella had expected. Come here, Rosa said, not to Adrian, to her. Isabella blinked. I have ice, Rosa said, and arnica, and something hot that isn't coffee, because coffee at this hour will keep you up until Tuesday. She turned and started walking deeper into the house. Come. Isabella looked at Adrian. He made a small gesture with his hand that meant go. She went. Rosa installed her at a kitchen table, pressed a wrapped ice pack against her cheek with the matter-of-fact gentleness of a woman who had done this before, set a mug of something that smelled like chamomile and honey in front of her, and sat down across from her with the posture of someone who was going to be there for as long as it took. You don't have to talk, Rosa said. Okay, Isabella said. But if you want to, I'm listening. Isabella held the ice to her face and breathed. For several minutes, neither of them said anything. It was the most peaceful Isabella had felt in 3 years. How long have you worked for him? She finally asked. Rosa looked at her steadily. Worked with him, she corrected gently but precisely. 21 years. That's a long time. It is. Is he? Isabella stopped. She didn't know how to finish the question without it sounding like what it was, which was a woman trying to assess whether the man who had just rescued her was going to become another problem. Rosa seemed to understand exactly what she hadn't said. He's not what they say, Rosa said. But he's not nothing either. She folded her hands on the table. He is exactly what he chooses to be, which is more than most people can say. Isabella thought about that. She thought about it while Rosa showed her upstairs to 2 rooms connected by a sitting area that looked out over the dark lawn toward where the lake must have been. She thought about it while she unpacked 2 days' worth of clothing into a dresser that smelled like cedar. She thought about it while she sat on the edge of the bed in a house that belonged to a man whose name had been used her entire adult life as a warning. She didn't sleep for a long time, but when she finally did, she slept without flinching at sounds. That was new too. In the morning, house sounded different. She had expected silence, the heavy, deliberate quiet of a place where people were careful. What she found instead was the ordinary sounds of a large space being inhabited. Rosa moving in the kitchen below. A door closing somewhere. A phone ringing twice and stopping. Normal. Shockingly, unexpectedly normal. She found Adrian in the room he used as an office, standing beside a desk that held more files than she had ever seen in a private home, talking to someone on the phone in a voice so low she only caught the edges. He saw her in the doorway and held up one finger. She waited. He finished the call. "How did you sleep?" he said. "Better than I should have." Something moved at the corner of his mouth. "Sit down." She sat. He sat across from her and folded his hands. The way he did, she was starting to notice when he was about to say something he had already decided to say. "Marcus made 3 calls last night after he left your apartment," he said. She stared at him. "You know that?" "Yes." "How?" "The same way I know most things." He looked at her steadily. "The first call was to his lawyer. The second was to a man I know by reputation. The third—" He paused. Just a fraction of a second. "The third was to someone I didn't expect." "Who?" Adrian was quiet. Who did he call Adrian? A man named Daniel Corr. He watched her face. "Does that name mean anything to you?" She searched her memory. "No." "Should it?" "Maybe not yet." He unfolded his hands and picked up a pen, turned it in his fingers, once put it down. "Daniel Corr is not a lawyer. He's not a businessman. He's not anyone you would have met at Marcus's dinner parties." He looked at her. "He is someone who handles problems for people who cannot handle them through legal channels." That's a careful way to say something. "I'm a careful person." "What does it mean?" Adrian looked at her directly. "It means Marcus Hale did not run away from your apartment last night because he was afraid of me. He ran because he needed to make a phone call before I had time to act." He paused. "He's not done. He's repositioning." The ice pack had been in her hand since Rosa gave it to her the night before. She was still holding it, she realized, though it had long since stopped being cold. She set it on the desk. "He's going to come after me," she said. "Possibly. Or—" Adrian stopped. She heard it. "Or what?" "Or you were never the target." The room got very quiet. Isabella looked at him. "Say that again," she said. "It's too early to know for certain." He held her gaze. "But the connection between Marcus and Daniel Corr is not new. They have a relationship that predates you by several years." He paused. "Which raises a question I need you to sit with before you react to it." "Ask it." "How did you meet Marcus Hale?" She frowned. "A party. A mutual friend's rooftop." "What was the mutual friend's name?" "Tyler Marsh. He worked in finance. Marcus and I both knew him through different—" She stopped. Something cold moved through her chest. "Why?" "Tyler Marsh has been employed by a company that Daniel Corr has investment in for 4 years." Adrian's voice was even. Precise. "The party on the rooftop was not a coincidence." She heard the words. She understood the words. Her brain took slightly longer to translate them into what they meant. "You're telling me," she said slowly, "that I was set up. I'm telling you it's possible. You're telling me that Marcus was placed in my life. I'm telling you it's possible," he said again, not harshly but firmly. "I don't deal in certainties I haven't confirmed. I'm asking you to consider it as a possibility while I find out more. Why?" Her voice came out harder than she intended. "Why would anyone set me up? I'm nobody. I'm an interior designer from Evanston. I don't have money. I don't have—" She stopped. She looked at him. "Me," she said. "Yes. They wanted to get to you. Through your father, possibly. Or through you directly, now that you've contacted me." He was watching her very carefully, the way someone watches when they're trying to see whether a person is going to break or hold. "Your father and I had a connection that was known to certain people. If anyone wanted leverage over me, they'd find the person he cared about most," she finished. The silence was enormous. "I need to think," she said. "Take whatever time you need." "How much time do I actually have?" He was quiet for one beat. "Less than I'd like to give you." She stood up. She crossed to the window. She looked out at the lawn without seeing it, her mind running backward through 3 years of her life with the mechanical, awful precision of someone replaying a recording they wish they hadn't found. The party where Marcus had seemed to choose her so specifically. The way he had inserted himself into every part of her life, quickly, deliberately, brick by brick. The questions he used to ask about her family, about her past, about who her father had known, framed as love, framed as interest, framed as "I want to know everything about you." The times he had gone through her phone, she had thought it was jealousy. She had thought it was insecurity. She had argued with him about it, cried about it, forgiven him for it. "I was looking for your number," she said without turning around. Adrian said nothing. "He went through my contacts more than once." She turned around. "He said he was checking if I was talking to other men, but he was looking for your number." She saw something change in Adrian's expression. Not surprise. Confirmation. "He found it, didn't he?" she said. "He found the number, and he realized what it meant, and that's what escalated everything. That's why last night happened. Not a fight, not temper. He panicked." "That's my assessment," Adrian said quietly. "So the violence wasn't—" She stopped. Her chest felt like it was being compressed from both sides. "The violence wasn't random. He was trying to—" She couldn't finish it. "I was trying to make sure you were too frightened to call anyone," Adrian said, because she couldn't. "And instead, I called you anyway." "Yes." She pressed her hand flat against the window glass. Cold. Solid. Real. "He underestimated me," she said. "He underestimated you," Adrian agreed. She turned around. "What happens now?" "Now," Adrian said, "you stay here. You are safe here. And I find out exactly what Marcus Hale is connected to, and how far back it goes." And then, he looked at her steadily. "And then it stops." She believed him. That was the thing that surprised her most about Adrian Valenti. Not the estate. Not the guards or the phone calls or the way problems seemed to rearrange themselves in his presence. It was the simple, unremarkable fact that when he said something, she believed it. 3 years of Marcus's promises had taught her not to believe anyone. One night with Adrian Valenti, and her compass was recalibrating. She didn't know what to do with that. The days moved in a rhythm she hadn't expected. She had anticipated tension. Walls. The suffocating awareness of being a guest in a dangerous man's house, of owing something she couldn't name, of waiting for the price to be named. What she found instead was quieter and in its own way harder to understand. Adrian worked constantly. He was in the office before she woke up and still there when Rosa called the house for dinner. Men came and went through the front of the estate, throughout the day, some in suits, some in clothes that told a different story, and they all shared one characteristic. They spoke to Adrian briefly, and they left quickly. Nobody stayed longer than they needed to. Nobody laughed. Nobody was relaxed. He worked inside a permanent state of calm, controlled tension that everyone around him absorbed and reflected back. Except Rosa. Rosa moved through his world like she had never agreed to be affected by it. Isabella ate breakfast with her on the third morning and watched Rosa answer Adrian's phone when it rang and say with complete tranquility, "He's not available," before hanging up on what sounded like a very agitated person, then immediately returned to her coffee. "Does that happen a lot?" Isabella asked. "Every morning," Rosa said. "Some people don't understand what unavailable means." "He doesn't take calls at breakfast." Rosa looked at her. "He didn't used to have a breakfast to not take calls at." Isabella looked down at her mug. "He eats alone normally," she said. "He eats standing over his desk normally," Rosa said, "which is not the same as eating." That evening, Isabella found out what Rosa meant. She was walking past the office at 7 in the evening when she saw Adrian through the half-open door standing at his desk, eating something out of a container without sitting down reading from a folder. He didn't look up. He didn't appear to be aware that eating while standing while reading was in any way an unusual activity. She pushed the door open. He looked up. "Come eat at an actual table," she said. He looked at the container in his hand, then at her. "I'm in the middle of—" "Rosa made enough for two," she said. "The table exists for a reason." A pause. Something moved behind his eyes that she was beginning to recognize the micro-adjustment of a man who had spent so many years making every decision alone that being invited into someone's simple normalcy was briefly genuinely disorienting. "5 minutes," he said. "I'll wait." He came in 4. They ate at the kitchen table where Rosa had pressed ice to her cheek 3 nights ago, and Adrian ate like a man who had been living on convenience and speed for so long that the experience of sitting down was mildly foreign. She didn't ask about the case. She didn't ask about Marcus. She talked about a project she had left half-finished at work, a restaurant renovation in the West Loop that she had been 3 weeks from completing when everything fell apart. She talked about the owner, a woman in her 70s named Eugenia, who had specific opinions about the color brown. She talked about the argument they'd had over wainscoting. Adrian listened. He didn't pretend to find it interesting. He actually found it interesting. She could tell by the way he asked a question about Eugenia's logic that was precise enough to mean he had been following every word. "She sounds like someone who has been making decisions by committee her whole life and is done with it," he said. "That's exactly it," Isabella said, surprised. "I understand that impulse." She looked at him across the table. "I imagine you do," she said. He looked back at her, and for the first time since she had known him, which was less than a week, which felt impossible, he didn't immediately redirect his eyes. On the 4th day, Marcus called her cell. She saw his name on the screen, and her stomach turned over the way it had been trained to over 3 years. A full-body response, a kind of shrinking that happened before her brain even had time to vote. Then she put the phone face down on the bed and breathed. Then she picked it up and answered. "Marcus. Bella." His voice was different, not the controlled calm from the bathroom door, something more careful, more calibrated. "I've been worried about you." "Have you? Where are you? Are you okay?" I went by your apartment and you're not there. I talked to Dana and she says she hasn't heard from you. Stop, she said. He stopped. "I'm not coming back," she said. "I need you to understand that." "Bella. I know things went badly the other night. Stop. Silence. "I know what you were doing," she said. "I know why you started dating me. I know about Tyler Marsh. I know about Daniel Kaur." The pause that followed was the most honest thing Marcus Hale had ever given her, because it lasted exactly 1 second too long. "I don't know what You found his number in my phone," she said. "Adrian's number, and that's why you escalated. Not anger, fear." She kept her voice steady. She was proud of how steady it was. "You were trying to make sure I'd never make that call." "Bella, you're being paranoid," she said. "Or accurate." Another pause. "Who's been talking to you?" he said. And his voice was different again now. The gentleness entirely gone, the careful calibration stripped out, and what was underneath it was the thing she had always known was there, but had never heard this plainly. I'm going to need you to stop calling this number, she said. You're making a mistake. His voice was flat. You think he's protecting you. He's not protecting you. He's using you. That's what he does. Everyone who gets close to Adrian Valenti ends up... Goodbye, Marcus. She hung up. She sat for a moment with her heart hitting the inside of her chest like it was trying to get out. Then she stood up. She walked to Adrian's office. She knocked. Come in, he said. She opened the door. Marcus just called me. Adrian looked up from his desk immediately. What did he say? He knows I know about Core. She crossed her arms. Not defensively, she was cold. He knows I know the connection wasn't random. He didn't deny it. She looked at Adrian. He said you're using me. What do you think? Adrian said. She looked at him. I think, she said carefully, that if you were using me, you've had 4 days to do it, and you've mostly just eaten dinner late and listened to me talk about wainscoting. Something moved at the corner of his mouth. That's not nothing, he said. No, she said. It's not. She uncrossed her arms. He's going to move. Whatever he's planning with Core, he's going to accelerate it now, because he thinks I've told you things. Have you? Everything I know. She met his eyes. Which is probably more than you realize because Marcus liked to talk. He thought I wasn't listening. She paused. I was always listening. Adrian looked at her for a long moment. Then he pulled a chair from against the wall and set it across from his desk. Sit down, he said. Tell me everything. She talked for 2 hours. She started from the beginning, the rooftop party, the early months of the relationship when everything had seemed like exactly what it appeared to be. Then the gradual changes. The first time he went through her phone. The business trips he was vague about. The names that came up in phone calls he took in other rooms. Adrian listened. He didn't interrupt. He asked questions only when she paused, and the questions were precise. The questions of a man who was not being told a story, but building a map. He mentioned a place once, she said. A warehouse somewhere south of the city. I didn't ask about it because at the time I didn't know. She stopped. He said it was a storage property he invested in. But then someone called and said there was a problem at the warehouse and he looked. She searched for the word. Exposed. Like I'd seen something I wasn't supposed to. Southside. He said Bridgeport. I heard it in the call. Adrian wrote something down. He sat back. Isabella. He looked at her with the kind of directness that had no performance in it at all. I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear it without making a decision in this room. Tell me. What you just gave me, he said, changes the scope of this. It's not just Marcus and Core. If that warehouse is what I think it is, we're talking about a network that's been operating in this city for 3 years with resources I haven't been able to trace. He held her gaze. You were sitting inside it without knowing it. The room seemed to compress around her. Marcus was a front, she said. A convincing one. I wasn't just targeting me because of you, she said. He was... She stopped. Was he ever real? Any part of it? Adrian was quiet. That was its own answer. She absorbed it. 3 years. 3 years of a relationship that was architecture. That was designed. That was executed by someone who had been paid or motivated to get close to her and stay there and mine everything she knew and everyone she was connected to. She thought she might be sick. She breathed through it. Okay, she said. You don't have to be okay. I know. She looked at him. But I'm going to be eventually, so I might as well start now. She sat forward. What do you need from me? Adrian looked at her. She would think about that look later in the quiet of the room. Rosa had prepared for her when she was lying in the dark, trying to separate what had just happened from everything she thought she'd known. She would think about the way Adrian Valenti looked at her in that moment. Not like someone useful, not like someone he was protecting out of obligation, not like a problem being managed, like someone he hadn't expected, like someone who had just surprised him in a way he hadn't been surprised in a very long time. I need you to trust me, he said. I already do, she said. That's what scares me. He was quiet. Then, it scares me too. She hadn't expected that. She looked at him. He looked back. And neither of them said anything else, because some things, when you finally name them, don't need anything added. Outside, somewhere behind the estate, the lake moved in the dark. In the city 30 miles south, Marcus Hale was making his next call. And in an office at the north shore of Lake Michigan, the two most dangerous pieces of the same puzzle sat across a desk from each other and finally understood what they were. The call came at 6 in the morning. Adrian was already at his desk. He was always already at his desk. Isabella had learned in 5 days that the man did not sleep the way ordinary people slept. He rested briefly, like something that had learned to function on minimal fuel, because maximum fuel had never been guaranteed. She heard his voice from the hallway. Low, controlled. But with an edge underneath it she hadn't heard before. She stood outside the office door without knocking. "When?" he said. A pause. "How many?" Another pause. "Don't move anything. I'm coming in." She stepped back from the door as he opened it. He nearly walked into her. He stopped. His eyes registered her presence, registered that she had been standing there long enough to hear, and made the calculation she was beginning to recognize the one where he decided how much to say. "Tell me," she said, before he could decide to say less than everything. He looked at her for 1 second. "The warehouse in Bridgeport," he said. "Someone moved on it last night. Everything's been cleared out." He held her gaze. "They knew we were looking." The blood moved out of her face. "Marcus," she said. "Or Core. Or someone between them." He was already moving toward the door, jacket in hand. "Either the call I had someone make to a contact near that block was less private than I thought." He stopped, turned. "Or Marcus has someone inside my operation." The sentence landed between them like a dropped weapon. "Inside your—" She couldn't finish it. "It's not impossible," he said. The steadiness in his voice was something she was learning to read differently. It wasn't the absence of feeling, she understood now. It was the presence of a man who had trained himself to function at full capacity inside the feeling rather than around it. "In my world, nothing is impossible. That's how you stay alive." "What does that mean for here, for this house?" "Rosa and 3 others I trust completely. Everyone else is being evaluated." He looked at her. "You're safe. That's not a reassurance. That's a fact." "I know the difference," she said. "I know you do." He left. She stood in the hallway and listened to the car pull away, and thought about what it meant to be inside a life where the people around you had to be evaluated for loyalty, the way other people evaluated spreadsheets. Then she went to find Rosa. Rosa was in the kitchen. She had heard the car. She did not ask questions. She poured coffee and pushed it across the counter to Isabella and said, "Eat something," and pointed to the bread she had already been slicing. Isabella ate. "How do you do it?" Isabella asked. Rosa looked at her. "Do what?" "Live inside this. The calls. The cars leaving before sunrise. The not knowing." She wrapped her hands around the mug. "How do you not spend every day waiting for something to collapse?" Rosa was quiet for a moment. "Because collapsing doesn't help anyone," she said. "I've seen people collapse in this life. It's not useful, and it's not pretty, and the people who do it end up leaving." She looked at Isabella steadily. "I didn't stay 21 years by falling apart every time something moved in the dark." "Weren't you ever afraid?" "Every single day," Rosa said. "Fear and collapsing are different things." Isabella drank her coffee. "He trusts you," she said. "He does." "He doesn't trust many people." "No," Rosa said. "He doesn't." She paused and then said something that wasn't quite a segue, but wasn't an accident either. "He trusted your father, completely. In a way, I never saw him trust anyone before or since." She picked up her own mug. "Your father was a rare man." "What did he do for Adrian?" Isabella said. "He told me your father saved his life. But he didn't. He doesn't tell the whole story." "Because it's not mine to tell, and it's not his habit to tell it," Rosa said simply. "But I'll say this. Adrian was 22 years old when your father found him. And the man sitting in the car your father found him in was not someone who expected to be alive by morning. She held Isabella's gaze. Your father drove him to a hospital himself, sat with him for 9 hours, never told anyone, never asked for anything in return. She paused. Not even a thank you. He just said, and Adrian told me this himself years later, he said, you don't owe me anything, but you owe yourself a better story than this one. Isabella sat very still. He never told me, she said quietly. He wouldn't, Rosa said. That was who he was. Isabella looked at the table, at the grain of the wood, at something solid and real. Adrian took that seriously, Rosa said. The better story. She stood up and took her mug to the sink. He didn't always succeed, but he took it seriously. Isabella sat with that for a long time after Rosa left the kitchen. Her father had saved a man's life and never once told her. And that man had driven through the city at 12:40 in the morning to open a locked door without a key, because a woman he'd never met called his number in a bathroom with a dying phone. She thought about what that meant. She was still thinking about it when her phone rang. Not Marcus this time. A number she didn't recognize. She answered, Ms. Romano. A man's voice. Smooth and deliberate, and with the specific texture of someone who was accustomed to being the most dangerous person in any conversation. We haven't been formally introduced. My name is Daniel Kaur. She didn't hang up. She knew she should. She knew the right thing. The smart thing was to end the call and call Adrian immediately, and let the people who understood this world handle it. She didn't hang up, because 3 years of being afraid had left her with something she hadn't expected when she finally stopped, a deep, very specific anger. Quiet. Focused. The kind of anger that doesn't shake your hands. The kind that makes them very still. I know who you are, she said. Of course you do, Kaur said pleasantly. Adrian's been thorough. He usually is. A pause. I want you to know that I have no interest in harming you, Ms. Romano. Whatever Marcus may have implied or done, that was his initiative, not mine. Throwing your partner under the bus already, she said. That's efficient. A short pause that told her she had surprised him. Marcus was a contractor, Kaur said. Not a partner. There's a distinction. That distinction doesn't change what he did. No, Kaur said. It doesn't, and I'm not calling to defend it. Another pause. I'm calling because I think you're in a position you don't fully understand, and I think Adrian has given you a version of this situation that serves his interests. Everyone's version of everything serves their interests, she said, including this call. Fair, Kaur said, and she heard something that might have been genuine in it, which was the most unsettling thing he could have done. But hear me out. 30 seconds. 20, she said. The warehouse in Bridgeport, he said. You told Adrian about it. Yes. Did he tell you what was in it? She hesitated. That was the half-second she wished she had back. No, she said. He didn't tell you, Kaur said, because what was in it complicates the story he's been telling you. His voice was perfectly even. Ask him, Ms. Romano. Ask Adrian Valenti what was in that warehouse. Ask him why he's been looking for it for 2 years. Ask him whose operation he's been trying to absorb. The call ended. He hung up before she could. She sat at the kitchen table for 4 minutes without moving. Then she picked up her phone and called Adrian. He answered on the first ring. Isabella. What was in the warehouse? She said. Silence. 1 beat. 2. She knew a telling silence from an innocent one. 3 years with Marcus had been an education in the language of pauses. Where are you? Adrian said. In the kitchen. What was in the warehouse, Adrian? We'll talk when I get back. We'll talk now, she said. Kaur just called me. The silence this time was different, shorter, sharper. On your cell. Yes. He has your number. She heard something shift in his voice. Not panic. Adrian didn't panic, but recalibration. Rapid, precise. Are you alone? Rosa's here. Stay inside. I'm 20 minutes out. A pause. Don't call him back. I didn't intend to, but Adrian. She stopped him before he could move on. What was in the warehouse? The pause was the longest one yet. Money, he said. And documentation. What kind of documentation? The kind that would have connected Kaur to 3 city officials and a federal prosecutor. His voice was flat and careful. The kind that I've been trying to locate for 2 years because Kaur has been using it to operate freely in this city. She absorbed that. So you weren't just protecting me, she said. I was protecting you. And also looking for evidence you've been trying to find for 2 years. Yes. She looked at the table, at the grain of the wood. Why didn't you tell me? She said. Because I didn't know how much you knew, he said. Because I didn't know if you were safe to tell. Because, a pause. Because I didn't want you inside this more than you already were. That wasn't your decision to make, she said. No, he said. It wasn't. I know that. The admission hit her differently than she expected. Not because he said it immediately without defense, without deflection. 20 minutes, he said. Don't go anywhere. He hung up. She put the phone on the table. Rosa appeared in the doorway with more coffee and the expression of a woman who had heard enough without hearing anything. Whatever he didn't tell you, Rosa said, pouring, ask him to explain it to your face, not on the phone. She set the pot down. He does better face to face. He learned to hide on the phone. In person, he never quite figured out how. Isabella looked at her. Is that advice? That's 21 years of observation, Rosa said, and went back to the stove. Adrian came back in 18 minutes. He came through the front door and directly to the kitchen, and he stood across the table from her with the specific stance of a man who has decided to stop managing information and start being honest, which is its own kind of courage, in a world built on the careful distribution of truth. Ask me what you need to ask, he said. Kaur said you've been trying to absorb his operation. She watched his face. Is that true? No. His voice was clear. I've been trying to destroy it. There's a difference. What's the difference? His operation, Adrian said, runs 3 trafficking routes through this city. People, not goods. He held her gaze. 2 years ago, I found the edge of it. I've been trying to find the center ever since. The room went very quiet. He traffics people, she said. Women, mostly, some younger. His jaw was tight. Kaur is careful. He keeps nothing on himself. It's all in the documentation. Layers of fronts and contractors and names that connect to the 3 officials I mentioned. He looked at her. The warehouse was the first physical location I'd traced that had a chance of holding paper evidence. Last night, someone cleaned it before my people could get inside. Isabella's hands were flat on the table. Marcus was part of this, she said. Not the trafficking directly. He was logistics, money movement. A pause. He knew what Kaur was doing. He knew what the money was. He knew, she said. And he sat across from me at dinner for 3 years, and he knew. Yes. She breathed through it. 3 years. She thought she had been in an abusive relationship. She had been. But underneath that abuse had been something so much larger and colder that the abuse itself almost seemed like a distraction, which was probably she realized exactly what it was designed to be. Keep her afraid. Keep her small. Keep her from asking questions. Keep her from becoming a loose end. I wasn't just a way to get to you, she said slowly. I was also, she stopped. He needed someone close to him who was credible, respectable, someone who made him look normal. She looked at Adrian. I made him look normal. Adrian was quiet. Yes, he said. For 3 years I was his cover. Yes. She looked at her hands. Then she looked up. I want to help, she said. Isabella. I was inside his life, she said. For 3 years. I went to the dinners and the trips and the functions and the parties where he talked to these people, and I stood next to him, and I was invisible because that's what he wanted me to be. Her voice was steady and hard. I remember faces. I remember names. I remember a man at a fundraiser last October who Marcus shook hands with for exactly 2 seconds too long, and then spent the rest of the night watching across the room. She met Adrian's eyes. I remember everything, because afraid people pay attention. They have to. Adrian looked at her. Something shifted in his expression. Not pity. Something that looked like it might have been the first time in a long time that someone had offered him something he didn't know how to receive. Sit down, he said. They both sat. The fundraiser, he said. What month? October, the 23rd. Museum of Contemporary Art. It was a benefit for, she paused, sorting through memory, a children's literacy program. Marcus donated $10,000 and made sure forgot the check. The man he watched. Describe him. Late 50s, silver hair cut close. He wore a red pocket square. He came with a woman I assumed was his wife, and they spent most of the evening near the bar on the east side of the room. Marcus introduced me to maybe 40 people that night. He never introduced me to him. Adrian was writing. Did you hear a name? Not that night. But... She stopped. Something surfaced from 3 years of background data. But 2 weeks later, Marcus took a call in the bathroom, and I heard him say a name. I didn't know why I remembered it. I just did. She paused. Brennan. He said Brennan already agreed. Adrian's pen stopped. He looked up. William Brennan, he said. You know him. Deputy City Attorney, Adrian said. He's one of the 3 officials. The air between them changed. You just confirmed a connection I've been trying to prove for 18 months, he said quietly. From a fundraiser I almost didn't go to, she said, because I had a headache and Marcus told me I was being difficult. They looked at each other across the table. You've been carrying this, he said. I didn't know I was carrying it. Your brain saved it anyway. Afraid people pay attention, she said again. I told you. He looked at her for a long moment. I owe you an apology, he said. For what specifically? For not telling you everything from the beginning. His voice was direct. No deflection. I made a decision about how much you could handle, and I made it without asking. That was wrong. It was, she said. It won't happen again. No, she said. It won't. Because I'm not going to let it. She held his gaze. If I'm in this, I'm in all of it. I'm not a person you manage. I'm a person you work with. That's the only way this works. Adrian was quiet for a full 5 seconds. Then he said, agreed. And he meant it. She knew he meant it because of the way he turned the legal pad to face her and set the pen on top of it and said, start from the beginning. Every name, every face, every dinner party and fundraiser and business trip he mentioned. He leaned back. We're going to map 3 years of your life and find everything he thought you weren't paying attention to. She pulled the legal pad toward her. This is going to take a while, she said. I have time. She started writing. They worked for 6 hours. Rosa brought food at noon, and neither of them looked up except to thank her. The kitchen table became a landscape of legal pads and photographs. Adrian had pulled from files he sent someone to retrieve, and Isabella moved through 3 years of her life with the systematic precision of someone who had finally understood what they were looking at. Names. She gave him names. Dates. She gave him dates. A trip to Miami in February 2 years ago, where Marcus had left her in the hotel for an entire afternoon and come back with a different energy, not drunk, not distracted, but satisfied. The particular satisfaction of someone who had just completed something. A phone conversation she had overheard fragments of, in which Marcus had said the words next month and the other side, and he doesn't know yet. A dinner at a private club in River North, where one of the men at the table had looked at her with an expression she had not understood at the time. Not attraction, not assessment. The particular look of someone calculating the value of an asset. She had thought she was imagining it. She had not been imagining it. There was a woman, Isabella said sometime in the late afternoon. She had reached a part of the timeline she had been circling without landing on, and now she landed on it. About 18 months ago. She called Marcus's cell when we were together, and he stepped out. When he came back, he looked... She paused. He looked like someone who'd been told something they were hoping not to hear. Did he tell you who it was? He said it was a vendor having a problem with an order. But afterward, he was different for days, distracted. And then about a week later, he told me the call had been resolved. She stopped. He used that exact word. Resolved. Adrian looked up from the page he was reviewing. 18 months ago, he said. Around February or March. I remember because it was around my birthday, and he was so distracted he forgot to make the reservation he'd promised. Adrian was very still. What? She said. He turned the legal pad around and pointed to a name. She read it. Diana Voss, she said. Who is she? She was a woman who worked logistics for Core's operation, Adrian said. She came to me 18 months ago. She said she wanted out. She said she had documentation she was willing to hand over. He held Isabella's gaze. She disappeared 3 days later. The word disappeared sat in the air between them and meant exactly what it always meant in sentences like that one. She called Marcus, Isabella said. Looking for a way out, Adrian said. Or trying to warn someone. Or she was working an angle I haven't mapped yet. His jaw was tight. What I know is that she called someone before she disappeared. I never knew who. She called Marcus, Isabella said again quietly. I was sitting 3 feet away. Yes. And then she. Yes. Isabella looked at the table. She thought about a woman she had never met, whose voice she had not even heard, only the aftermath of it in Marcus's face, who had been sitting inside a situation she had been trying to escape, who had reached out, who had been in some way Isabella couldn't fully map resolved. He knew, she said. Her voice was very quiet. He knew what happened to her, and he came back to our dinner and acted like... She stopped. He acted like nothing. Yes. She looked at Adrian. I need you to get him, she said. Not stop him, not handle it, not any of the careful, managed language she had been using for days. Get him, she said. Whatever that means in your world, I need you to get him. Adrian held her gaze for a long moment. I'm going to, he said. And Core. And Core. And the officials. Brennan and whoever else. All of it, Adrian said. This has been 2 years in the making. You've just... He paused. You've just given me the last pieces I needed. How? Because everything you remembered puts me inside his calendar. Inside his relationships. Inside the connections he spent 3 years being very careful to keep separate. He looked at the table covered in notes. Marcus thought you were decoration. He thought you were background. He thought keeping you afraid kept you invisible. His eyes came back to her. He was wrong about everything. She looked at the legal pads. 3 years of her life, laid out in someone else's handwriting, mapped and dated, and suddenly legible. What do we do now? She said. Adrian was already reaching for his phone. Now, he said, we move. Before Core realizes what you just told me, and decides to cut his losses in a way that makes this harder. He stood up. I need to make 3 calls. After that, he looked at her. After that, I need you to stay here. Not because I'm managing you, because what happens next isn't something you need to be near. You're going into the city. Yes. Alone. No. She looked at him. She wanted to argue. She understood, genuinely understood, that she had nothing to argue with, not because he was right to make the decision for her, but because she recognized the moment for what it was. The place where her part of the work ended and his part began. The handoff. The place where having the courage to remember was different from having the training to act. Come back, she said. He looked at her. It was a simple sentence. It was not a simple thing to say. Yes, he said. He made the calls. He left. And Isabella Romano sat at the kitchen table in a house on the north shore of Lake Michigan, surrounded by 3 years of her own life, finally mapped into truth. And she waited. Rosa came and sat across from her without a word. The lake moved behind the house. The city was 30 miles south. And somewhere inside it, the careful, dangerous architecture of a lie 3 years in the making was about to meet the one thing it had never planned for. The woman it had tried to make invisible, who had been paying attention the entire time. The waiting was the hardest thing she had ever done. And Isabella Romano had done hard things. She had stayed in a relationship for 3 years with a man who was both more and less than he appeared. She had hidden on a bathroom floor with a dying phone. She had sat across a kitchen table and mapped the coordinates of her own betrayal with steady hands. But waiting, sitting inside the silence of someone else's action, while the city 30 miles south did whatever it was going to do, that was a different kind of hard. Rosa stayed. She didn't fill the silence with noise. She didn't offer reassurances or predictions or the particular brand of optimism that people use when they don't know what else to give. She simply stayed in the kitchen, doing the ordinary work of the house, and her presence said everything her words didn't need to. At 8 in the evening, Isabella's phone buzzed. Not Adrian. A Chicago area code she didn't recognize. She answered. Ms. Romano. A woman's voice, professional, careful. My name is Agent Tara Simmons. I'm with the FBI. I'd like to speak with you about Daniel Corr. Isabella was very still. How did you get this number? She said. Adrian Valenti gave it to us, Agent Simmons said. Approximately 40 minutes ago. Rosa looked up from across the kitchen. Isabella looked back at her. Is he? She stopped. She reorganized the question. Is Mr. Valenti with you now? He's with my colleagues, yes. A pause. He's not under arrest, Ms. Romano. He came to us voluntarily, and he brought documentation that we've been trying to obtain independently for the better part of 2 years. The legal pads, the notes from their 6-hour session. Everything Isabella had remembered translated into something Adrian could carry through a federal door. He went to the FBI, Isabella said. He did, which is why I'm calling you. A pause. We'd like your corroboration on several points, specifically regarding a fundraiser at the Museum of Contemporary Art in October and your direct interactions with Marcus Hale over the past 3 years. Another pause, more deliberate. Your account combined with what Mr. Valenti has provided gives us sufficient cause to move tonight. Move on who? Marcus Hale, Daniel Corr, and... The agent's voice shifted fractionally, not hesitation, but precision. Deputy City Attorney William Brennan. Isabella sat down without deciding to. Tonight, she said. Within the hour pending your confirmation on 2 specific details. Ask me, Agent Simmons asked. 2 questions precise, narrow, the kind that told Isabella someone had already built the frame and just needed 2 load-bearing details confirmed. The fundraiser date. The specific language Marcus had used about Brennan in the phone conversation she had overheard. Isabella answered both without hesitation. Thank you, Simmons said. Someone will contact you within the next few hours. Stay where you are. I know, Isabella said. I'm good at that. She hung up. Rosa was already putting the kettle on. He went to the FBI, Isabella said mostly to herself. Rosa said simply. I didn't expect that. What did you expect? Isabella thought about it honestly. I don't know. Something that looked more like his world, his methods. She looked at her phone. Not a federal building. Rosa turned around. He's been trying to bring Corr down for 2 years, she said. You think he cares which door he uses as long as it's the right door? She held Isabella's gaze. That's the thing people get wrong about him. They think he loves the power. He doesn't. He loves the outcome. She turned back to the stove. Always has. Isabella sat with that. She thought about a 22-year-old man in a car who hadn't expected to survive the night. A man her father had driven to a hospital and sat beside for 9 hours without asking for anything in return except a better story. She wondered what kind of story Adrian had been writing for 20 years. She thought she was starting to see it. The first call came at 10:14, Adrian's voice. Not the controlled flatness she'd learned to decode. Something underneath it that she hadn't heard before. A looseness barely perceptible, like the specific exhale of someone who has been holding something for a very long time. Marcus is in federal custody, he said. She closed her eyes for 1 second. And Corr. 30 minutes behind. A pause. Brennan turned himself in. Apparently he'd been waiting for an excuse to stop. People do that, Isabella said. Wait for permission to be finished with something. Yes. Another pause. Are you all right? Yes. She meant it. Are you? The pause that followed was one she had learned to read, the pause of a man for whom being asked that question still required a moment to locate the honest answer. Yes, he said. I think so. When are you coming back? Late. There are statements to give and... He stopped. Don't wait up. I wasn't going to, she said. Good. Adrian. Yes. You went to the FBI, she said. With the documentation. You walked in voluntarily. Yes. That's not a small thing, she said. For someone in your position. No, he said. It's not. It was the right thing. I know. Do you? She said. Not because I told you. Not because it was strategically useful. Because you knew. A silence. Yes, he said. Because I knew. Okay, she said. Come home when you're done. She had used the word home without planning to. She heard him register it. Neither of them addressed it. Yes, he said, and hung up. Rosa came to the doorway. Marcus Hale is in federal custody, Isabella told her. Rosa's shoulders dropped approximately half an inch, a movement so small it would have been invisible to anyone who hadn't been watching her carry something for 12 hours. Good, Rosa said for the second time that night. And she turned around and started cooking something that wasn't dinner because it was too late for dinner. Something that was just food for people who needed feeding. He came back at 2 in the morning. Isabella was in the sitting room between her two rooms, not sleeping, pretending to read something on her phone with the lamp on at a low level. She heard the car. She heard the front door. She heard his footsteps on the stairs, different from how he moved during the day. Still controlled, but heavier, the movement of someone whose body was acknowledging what the mind had been suppressing for hours. He stopped at the doorway. He looked tired. She had not seen him look tired before. He looked like himself, but with the professional surface slightly thinner than usual, and underneath it, the actual person was closer to visible. You're awake, he said. I said I wasn't going to wait up, she said. I didn't say I wasn't going to be awake. Something moved at the corner of his mouth. He came in and sat in the chair across from her, which was the first time he had been in her rooms, and he sat in it like a man whose legs had finally made a decision his pride was still negotiating with. Tell me, she said. He told her. Cor was in custody. The documentation Adrian had assembled, cross-referenced with the 3 years of Isabella's memory, mapped into dates and names and locations, had given federal agents enough to move simultaneously on 4 addresses. The trafficking routes had been connected to a larger network. There were federal partners in 3 other cities who had been waiting for exactly this junction point. Diana Voss, the woman who had disappeared 18 months ago, had not been found. But there were now federal resources looking specifically. She might still be alive, Isabella said. She might, Adrian said. It's the possibility I'm holding on to. Marcus had lawyered up within minutes of arrest, which surprised no one. His lawyer was one of the best in the city. It didn't matter. The documentation was too specific, too corroborated, and 3 of Cor's own associates had already begun the particular legal mathematics of trading information for reduced exposure. He's done, Adrian said. The lawyers will play their games. The timeline will take months, but he's done. And Cor? He paused. Cor made a mistake. He assumed I would use his methods. He assumed this would stay in the dark, where neither of us could go to authorities without implicating ourselves. He looked at her. He didn't know what I had access to. My memory, she said. Your memory, he agreed. And the fact that the worst thing Marcus ever did to you was make you invisible enough to see everything. She looked at him. That's a very careful way to find something good in something terrible, she said. I've had practice. She looked at her hands, then back at him. There's something I need to ask you, she said. Ask it. The trafficking, the women. She met his eyes. Did you know it was this when you came to my apartment that night? No, he said. I knew Marcus was connected to Cor. I knew Cor's operation was dangerous. I did not know the scope until you told me about the warehouse. He held her gaze. And I didn't know about Diana Voss until you told me about the phone call. If I hadn't called you. But you did. Adrian. But you did, he said again gently, which was not the same as dismissing the question. I can't live in what would have happened. I can only work with what did. He paused. What did happen is that a woman called me from a bathroom floor and remembered 3 years of information that no one else could have provided, and because of that, a network that has been operating in this city for years is dismantled tonight. He held her gaze. That's what happened. She breathed. You're doing that thing, she said. What thing? Where you redirect toward the outcome to avoid the part where you feel something about the process. He was quiet. She had hit something real. She could see it in the way his expression didn't change too precisely, too deliberately unchanged. Rosa told me. Isabella said that you do better face to face, that you learn to hide on the phone. She held his gaze. So here we are, face to face. Tell me the part you've been not saying. Another silence. This one was different from all the others. This one was a man deciding something. When I got your call, Adrian said slowly, at 12:17 in the morning. When you said your name. He paused. Isabella Romano. He looked at her. You have your father's voice, the same quality in it, the same... He stopped. I have heard exactly 2 people in my life say my name and have it sound like they believed I was worth calling. He held her gaze. Your father was the first, 22 years ago. He paused. You were the second. The room was very quiet. That's why you came yourself, she said. Yes. Not just because of the debt. The debt was the excuse, he said. The reason was your voice. She looked at him for a long moment. Adrian, she said. Yes. I need to tell you something, and I need you to actually hear it. I'm listening. What Marcus did to me, she said. The 3 years, the fear, the way he managed me, that's not a small thing. I'm not finished processing it. I'm going to be working through it for a long time. She held his gaze. I'm not looking for someone to replace what he was. I'm not looking for protection. I'm not looking for someone who makes the scary things go away. I know, he said. Do you? Yes. His voice was steady. Because if you were, I would be exactly the wrong answer. She looked at him. What are you? She said. He thought about it. Genuinely, visibly thought about it. Someone who has spent 20 years building walls because the alternative felt unsurvivable, he said. Someone who has a reputation that is partly accurate and partly the story people needed to tell about me because the real version is more complicated. He paused. Someone who ate dinner standing at his desk every night for years until a woman with a bruise on her face told him that tables exist for a reason. He held her gaze. Someone who went to a federal building tonight instead of doing what his world expected, because doing what his world expected stopped being enough somewhere around 6 hours into a conversation with you. She felt that move through her chest. That, she said, is the most honest thing you've said to me. I know, he said. It's also the most you've said at once. I know that too. She smiled. Not the careful smile she had learned to wear as armor. The real one. The one that came from a place that Marcus had spent 3 years trying to find and eliminate the place where she was simply herself. Okay, she said. He looked at her. Okay what? Okay, I'm not going back to the apartment on North Claremont. A pause. I didn't ask you to. I know, she said. I'm telling you anyway. She held his gaze. I don't know what any of this looks like. I don't know what we are, or what we're going to be, or whether the 22 different complicated things in both our lives are going to make this possible or impossible. She paused. But I'm not running from it. Neither am I, he said. Good. She looked at him. Now you look like you haven't slept in 3 days. 2.5, he said. Go sleep. He stood up. He paused at the doorway. Isabella, he said. She looked at him. Your father would be... He stopped. He adjusted whatever he had been about to say, like someone careful with weight. He would not be surprised, he said. That's what I mean. He would not be surprised by who you are. She felt that in the place behind her sternum, where she had held herself together on a bathroom floor 10 days ago. He would not be surprised by who you chose to be either, she said. Adrian looked at her for one more moment. Then he was gone. She sat in the quiet sitting room for a long time afterward. In the morning, everything looked different. Not because the world had changed its surface. The house was the same. The lake was where it had always been. Rosa was in the kitchen doing exactly what she did every morning. But the particular light of after 3 years after a bathroom floor, after 6 hours of legal pads, and 2 hours of FBI calls, and a 2 in the morning conversation that had moved through more honesty than most people achieve in a decade, that light changed the way she saw everything it touched. She sat down at the kitchen table. Rosa poured coffee. "He told me about my father," Isabella said. Rosa sat down across from her. "What part?" Rosa said. "The part about the car, the hospital, the 9 hours." She wrapped both hands around the mug. "He said my father told him he didn't owe anything. He just said to write a better story." Rosa nodded. "Do you think he did?" Isabella said. "A better story." Rosa was quiet for a moment. "I think," she said, "that the story isn't finished yet." She held Isabella's gaze. "But the last chapter is looking better than the first one." Isabella looked at her coffee. She thought about Marcus. About 3 years that had been architecture. About the woman named Diana Voss, who had tried to get out and reached for a lifeline that had gone to the wrong person. About federal agents moving through 4 addresses on a Tuesday night because a frightened woman on a bathroom floor had decided to make one more call. She thought about fear, about what it does to a person, what it takes, what it leaves behind when it finally lifts. She thought about what it felt like to breathe. Her phone rang. Dana, her best friend who had been calling unanswered for 10 days. She answered. "Isabella Romano," Dana said. Her voice was the specific texture of someone managing the distance between relief and fury. "You have 10 seconds to explain why you have been dark for 10 days before I start actually crying." "I'm okay," Isabella said. "I'm really okay." "You sound different." "I am different." "Different how?" "Different good or different?" "I need to get in my car and drive to wherever you are different." Isabella looked at the kitchen table, at the grain of the wood, at Rosa's coffee cup and the morning light and the ordinary solid permanence of a place that had held her while the world reorganized itself. "Different good," she said. "I promise." She paused. "I'll explain everything. There's a lot to explain." "There better be," Dana said. "I want to hear all of it." "You will," Isabella said. "All of it." She meant that, because one of the things that fear steals quietly and persistently, and over such a long time, you almost don't notice until it's gone, is the ability to tell your own story. To say this happened to me without performing it for someone else's comfort. To sit across from someone who loves you and be fully truthfully present. She was done being afraid, not done being careful, not done being awake to the world and its complications, and the fact that the man sleeping somewhere in this house had a life that was still complicated in ways she had only begun to map. But done with fear as an operating mode. Done with small. Done with the version of herself that had been standing in the background of her own life for 3 years, holding someone else's coat, making someone else look normal. She was going to be loud again. Loud about the restaurant in the West Loop, and Eugenia's opinions about Brown and the wainscoting argument that had never been resolved. Loud about her own work, which was good, genuinely, quietly good, and which she had allowed to shrink in proportion to how much of herself she was giving to Marcus's performance of their relationship. She was going to call her sister and not protect her from the truth. Her sister was 8 months pregnant and fully capable of handling the truth. And Isabella's reflex to shelter the people she loved from difficult things was its own kind of diminishment. She was going to figure out slowly and without pressure what it meant to be in a house on the north shore of Lake Michigan, with a man who ate dinner standing up until she told him that tables exist for a reason. What it meant to trust someone who had earned it specifically, rather than someone who had manufactured it. She was going to take her time, and she was going to be here for it. Fully, completely, loudly here. Her phone buzzed. A text. Adrian. 2 words. Coffee ready. She looked at it for a moment. Then she stood up, smiled at Rosa, and went to find him. The coffee was on the kitchen counter, and Adrian was on the phone. That was how the first morning of the rest of everything looked: ordinary, almost aggressively ordinary. A man with a phone pressed to his ear, and 2 mugs filled, and waiting like any morning in any household where 2 people were figuring out the specific geography of sharing space. Isabella took her mug. She didn't interrupt. She sat down at the table and listened to his half of the conversation, which was in the clipped navigational shorthand he used when he was moving pieces she couldn't fully see. Confirmed on all 3, he said. Yes, the 4th address connects through the subsidiary. Tell Chen it's the February filing, not March. He'll know. A pause. No, that's not negotiable. Tell them I said so. He hung up. He sat down across from her. He looked better than 2 in the morning. Not rested. She doubted Adrian Valenti had ever been fully rested in his adult life, but recharged. Back inside the controlled, precise energy that was his native operating mode. Chen is your lawyer, she said. One of them. The February filing versus the March one matters. The difference between a charge that sticks and one that gets thrown on a technicality. He looked at her over his mug. How long were you listening? Long enough to know you haven't stopped working since you got home. I stopped, he said. I slept 4 hours. 4 hours. It's more than usual. She looked at him. That's not something you should be proud of. I'm not proud of it, he said. It's just accurate. She held his gaze. That's going to change. He raised an eyebrow. 4 hours is not enough, she said. You function like it is, but functioning and thriving are different things, and I'm not going to sit across the table from you every morning and watch you run yourself on empty and pretend that's fine. He was quiet for a moment. Then, you're planning to have opinions about my sleep schedule. I'm planning to have opinions about a lot of things, she said. You should prepare. The corner of his mouth moved, just barely. But she saw it. Noted, he said. She drank her coffee. He drank his. The morning moved around them, Rosa in the background sounds of the house, settling into its daytime rhythm, the ordinary percussion of a place being lived in. The federal case, Isabella said. How long will it take? Months, Adrian said. Possibly longer. Core's legal team is going to complicate every juncture they can. He set down his mug. But the documentation is solid. Your corroboration on Brennan sealed a connection they couldn't manufacture on their own. It holds. And Marcus. His expression was neutral. His lawyer already began the conversation about cooperation in exchange for reduced charges. She absorbed that. He's going to trade information. He doesn't have a better option. The evidence against him is specific. The emails alone. He paused. Let's say that Marcus made the mistake of putting things in writing that someone like Core would never have committed to a digital record. He thought he was untouchable, Isabella said. People who feel untouchable get sloppy. Yes. He felt untouchable because of me, she said. Because I made him look legitimate. Normal. Like someone with a real relationship and a real life who couldn't possibly be what he was. That's his failure, Adrian said. Not yours. I know. She looked at the table. I'm not blaming myself. I've done enough of that. I'm just naming it clearly, so it doesn't become a story I tell wrong later. He looked at her. That's a wise thing, he said. My therapist would agree, she said. When I get one, which is going to be soon. Something moved in his expression. Something approving, though he kept it quiet, which was very him. Good, he said simply. The phone on the table buzzed. He looked at the screen. He picked it up and read something. His expression didn't change, but she watched the stillness in his face shift into something different. The specific stillness of a person reading something they had been both waiting for and dreading. What? She said. He looked up. Diana Voss, he said. Isabella's breath caught. They found her, he said. She stared at him. Alive. Alive, he said. In a federal safe house in Cincinnati. She went to the FBI independently 8 months ago. They've had her in protective custody while they built the case. He held Isabella's gaze. She's the one who gave them the framework. We gave them the specifics. Isabella felt something loosen in her chest that she hadn't realized had been knotted there since the moment she first heard that name. Diana Voss, a woman who had tried to get out, who had reached for help and been failed by the person who received the call. She's alive, Isabella said. She's alive, Adrian confirmed. She made it out. She made it out. Isabella pressed her hand flat on the table. She thought about a woman she had never met. A woman who had sat inside something terrible and had still, at significant personal risk, decided to reach toward the light. Who had survived 8 months in a safe house, giving information, building a case. While somewhere in Chicago, Isabella Romano had been sitting inside a relationship she didn't yet understand was connected to that same darkness. She's going to have to testify, Isabella said. Probably. So will you. I know. She looked at him. I'm not afraid of that. I know you're not. I want to meet her, Isabella said. Eventually, when it's appropriate, when she's ready. She held his gaze. I want her to know that the phone call she made even to the wrong person started something, that it mattered. Adrian looked at her for a long moment. I'll make sure she knows, he said. 3 weeks later, Isabella Romano went back to work, not to the apartment on North Claremont, which she had already arranged to vacate. Some things are finished, and the only honest response is to let them be finished. But to work. To the restaurant renovation in the West Loop, to Eugenia and her opinions about Brown, to the wainscoting argument that had been waiting patiently in her absence. Eugenia was 74 years old and had been running restaurants in Chicago for 40 years and had survived 3 recessions, 2 divorces, and a fire that took out her second location in 2009. She was not a woman who required delicate handling. She looked at Isabella across the construction dust of the half-finished dining room and said, "You look different." "I am different," Isabella said. "Good different or bad different?" "Good." Isabella looked around the room. At the work that was 3 weeks behind schedule because her life had required 3 weeks. "I'm sorry for the delay." "Don't apologize," Eugenia said. "Finish it." She paused. "Also, I've reconsidered the brown." "Which brown?" "The accent wall." Eugenia pointed. "You were right. It's too heavy. I want the terracotta you suggested in February." Isabella looked at where she was pointing. She thought about the terracotta, about the way she had presented it in February, and Marcus had said at dinner that night that her taste was a little aggressive, and she had quietly wondered if he was right. He had not been right. She had always known he had not been right. "Terracotta it is," she said. Eugenia nodded with the satisfaction of a woman who had decided to agree with someone and was going to do so completely. Then she looked at Isabella more carefully. "Someone hurt you," she said, not a question. "Yes," Isabella said. "Are you handled?" It was the most direct possible way to ask the question, and it was the exact right question. "Getting there," Isabella said. "Good," Eugenia said. "Because this room needs you at full capacity, and I'm not paying half price for half present." She turned and walked toward the kitchen to argue with the contractor about the tile, which was the Eugenia version of having said something tender, and then politely ending the conversation before it became one. Isabella looked at the wall that was going to be terracotta. She pulled out her phone and took a photo. She sent it to Adrian with a single line of text, "The color I was right about. Finally going in." His response came in 40 seconds. "Tell Eugenia I said she made the right call." Isabella smiled. "She already knows that. She doesn't need you to confirm it." 3 dots. "Then neither do you." She looked at that for a moment. Then she put her phone in her pocket and went to settle the tile argument. The federal hearings began 6 weeks after that. Isabella testified on a Thursday in October, in a federal building she had passed on Michigan Avenue 100 times without ever imagining she would be inside. She wore a gray blazer she had bought specifically for this because she wanted to be wearing something that she had chosen with intention and not urgency. Agent Tara Simmons met her outside. She was a compact woman in her 40s, with the kind of eyes that assessed and retained everything they saw. She shook Isabella's hand, like someone who had been briefed, but was also forming her own opinion in real time. "You don't need to be nervous," Simmons said. "I'm not nervous," Isabella said. Simmons looked at her. "Most people are. I've been preparing for this for 35 years, Isabella said. Every dinner party, every fundraiser, every time I stood in a room and paid attention, because being invisible made paying attention the only power I had." She held Simmons's gaze. "I've been rehearsing without knowing it. I'm ready." Simmons looked at her for one more moment. "Good," she said. "Let's go." Isabella testified for 4 hours. She was precise. She was chronological. She was specific in the way that comes from genuinely remembering rather than reconstructing. And when the defense asked questions designed to create uncertainty about her reliability, she answered each one with the patient factual specificity of someone who had been paying careful attention for 3 years and was finally being asked to speak. The defense attorney was good. He was trying to frame her as a woman scorned, emotional, motivated by personal grievance, unreliable by virtue of the relationship she had been in and the way it ended. She was prepared for that. "Ms. Romano," he said with the particular tone of someone who has decided condescension is a strategy, "isn't it true that your account of these events is filtered through a deeply personal and painful experience that necessarily affects your objectivity?" Isabella looked at him. "My account," she said, "is filtered through 3 years of being present in rooms where people said things they believed I wasn't listening to." She held his gaze. "You're right that it's personal. It's also accurate. Those two things are not mutually exclusive." Silence in the room. The defense attorney moved on. She walked out of the federal building at 4 in the afternoon into autumn air that was sharp and cold and smelled like the lake, and she stood on the sidewalk and breathed it in. Her phone rang. Adrian. "How did it go?" he said. "Well," she said. "I think." "I know," he said. "Simmons texted me." "She texted you?" "She said, and I'm reading this directly, 'Your person was exceptional. Don't mess it up.'" Isabella laughed. It came out of her fully and without self-consciousness, the kind of laugh that had been compressed for 3 years and was still finding its way back to full volume. "She said your person," Isabella said. "She did." "What did you tell her?" A pause. "I told her I was doing my best," he said. "That's honest," Isabella said. "I'm working on honesty," he said. "You've been influential." She stood on the sidewalk outside the federal building and looked up at a sky that was going gray and cold and entirely magnificently real. "Come pick me up," she said. "Already outside," he said. She turned. The dark car was at the curb. She walked toward it. Marcus Hale pleaded guilty 11 weeks later. He traded the detailed architecture of Core's operation routes, contacts, money channels, the names of 3 additional officials in 2 other cities in exchange for a sentence reduction that his lawyer called a victory, and that Isabella, when she heard about it, called exactly what it was: a man saving himself at the expense of everyone he had used to get there. She was not surprised. She was not even particularly angry. She had spent the anger. She had spent it in a therapist's office on Tuesday afternoons with a woman named Dr. Carver, who had the very specific gift of listening without steering, and in the slow, deliberate work of unpacking 3 years of calculated damage and understanding which parts were Marcus's architecture and which parts were hers to rebuild. "He's going to prison," she told Dr. Carver on the Tuesday after the plea. "How do you feel about that?" Dr. Carver said. "Like it's correct," Isabella said. "Like justice is a slow, imperfect machine, but it moved in the right direction." She paused. "And like it's not the ending of my story. It's just the ending of his chapter in it." Dr. Carver looked at her. "That's significant," she said. 3 months ago, you would have said it was the ending. 3 months ago, I was still thinking about my life in terms of what Marcus did to it," Isabella said. "Now I think about it in terms of what I'm doing with it." She paused. "That's different." "It's very different," Dr. Carver said. "Daniel Core was convicted on 17 federal counts 4 months after that. The trafficking network was dismantled across 4 cities. The 3 city officials entered plea agreements that ended careers and began sentences. The documentation that Adrian had spent 2 years trying to locate, and that Isabella had inadvertently pointed him toward by remembering a warehouse in Bridgeport mentioned in a phone call she had overheard, became the evidentiary spine of a federal case that Simmons described in a press statement as the most significant organized crime prosecution in Chicago in a decade. Isabella read the press statement on her phone in a coffee shop in the West Loop, 2 blocks from Eugenia's restaurant, which had opened 3 weeks earlier, to reviews that specifically mentioned the terracotta accent wall. She texted Adrian, "It's done." His response was immediate. "Come home when you're ready." Home. He had started using that word too. Neither of them had made an announcement about it. There had been no conversation that began with, "So what are we?" or ended with a decision about labels. It had simply happened the way real things happen incrementally. Then, undeniably, the slow accumulation of mornings and dinners, and late nights, and honest conversations, until the fact of it was too solid to be called anything other than what it was. She had moved her things to the North Shore 6 weeks after the testimony. Not because he asked he didn't ask, because asking directly was still something he was working on, and she had decided to find that endearing rather than frustrating. She moved because she wanted to. Because the house felt like the first place in years where she was fully, completely, loudly herself. Rosa had helped her unpack. Rosa had not said "I told you so," because Rosa was not that kind of woman, but she had made something with the good bread to mark the occasion. That was Rosa's version of celebration, and Isabella had learned to speak it fluently. On a Saturday in February, almost exactly 14 months after a woman had hidden on a bathroom floor with a cracked phone and 9% battery, Isabella Romano sat across from Adrian Valenti at the kitchen table where Rosa had pressed ice to her face on the night everything changed. They were eating breakfast. Actually eating breakfast. Not standing. Not over a desk. Not between calls. Sitting down with food on actual plates. The particular ordinary miracle of 2 people sharing a meal with nowhere else to be. Adrian was reading something on his phone, which he did even when he was trying not to, because some habits were 20 years deep, and honesty meant acknowledging which ones were still being excavated. "Put it down," she said. He looked up. "5 more minutes," he said. "You said that 20 minutes ago." He put the phone face down on the table. She smiled. He looked at her with the expression she had come to know better than any other, the one that had no performance in it at all, no management, no professional surface. Just him looking at her with the specific quality of a man who was still slightly surprised every time by the fact of her. "I talked to Simmons yesterday," he said. "About Diana Voss." He held her gaze. "She's relocating. New identity, new city. She testified in the Cincinnati proceedings last month, and the case closed." He paused. "She asked Simmons to pass something along." Isabella was very still. She said, He looked down at his phone because apparently he had saved the exact message. He picked it up, and Isabella decided not to point out that this didn't count as putting it down because she wanted to hear this more than she wanted to win the argument. "Tell the woman who remembered the warehouse. Tell her that the phone call I made went to the wrong person, but it started a chain that ended up in the right hands. Tell her I got out because of what she remembered. Tell her thank you." Isabella looked at the table. She looked at the grain of the wood. She had looked at this table in so many different emotional states: frightened, exhausted, angry, hopeful, uncertain, decided. And now she looked at it in this one, which didn't have a clean name, but felt like the specific weight of understanding that what you do matters, even when you don't know you're doing it, even when you're just surviving, even when all you have left is a cracked phone and 9% battery and one name you never thought you'd call. "She got out," Isabella said. "She got out," Adrian said. Isabella looked up. "My father would be—" She stopped. Adrian was already looking at her. "He would be proud," Adrian said. "Not surprised. He always knew who you were." He held her gaze. "He told me the night I met him. He said he had a daughter in Chicago, and she was the most stubborn person he had ever loved." He paused. He meant it as the highest possible compliment. Isabella felt the place behind her sternum do the thing it did. Sometimes the compression and release of feeling something too large to stay contained. "He would like you," she said. "If he could see." She gestured between them at the table at the morning at all of it. "He would like this." "I hope so," Adrian said quietly. "I've been trying to be the better story he asked for." "You are," she said. He looked at her. "We both are," she said. He reached across the table. He put his hand over hers. Not a dramatic gesture, not performed. Just his hand warm and real on top of hers on the kitchen table on a Saturday morning in February. She turned her hand over and held it. They sat there. The house made its ordinary sounds around them. Rosa somewhere in the background. The lake behind the property doing what the lake always did, indifferent and enormous and permanent. "I want to tell you something," Isabella said. "Tell me." "The night I called you," she said. "In the bathroom, with 9% battery and a cracked screen." She looked at him. "I was so afraid. I had been afraid for so long that I couldn't remember what not being afraid felt like. And I called your number because I had no one else, and I genuinely did not know if you would answer, or if you would help, or what the help would cost, or whether I was trading one danger for another." "I know," he said. "But I called anyway," she said. "Because at some point the fear of staying still becomes bigger than the fear of the unknown. And the bathroom floor was my still place. That was as still as it was ever going to get." He was listening with the full particular attention he gave to things that mattered. "I called you because I had no choice," she said. "And then I stayed because I did." She held his gaze. "There's a difference. I need you to know the difference." "I know the difference," he said. "You didn't save me," she said. "You gave me the safety to save myself. That's different too." "Yes," he said. "It is." "My father asked you for a better story," she said. "I think the better story was never just yours. I think it was always going to be ours. Together." She paused. "I think he knew that. Even then." Adrian looked at her. For the first time in the 14 months she had known him through fear and federal hearings, and 2 in the morning conversations and breakfast arguments about sleep schedules, and the slow, deliberate, unglamorous work of 2 damaged people choosing to be better. She watched something in his face go completely unguarded. Not just the corner of his mouth, not just the eyes, all of it. The man who had spent 20 years building walls that kept the world at a manageable distance, who had eaten dinner standing over a desk for years, who had stood outside a church in the cold because he didn't think he had the right to come inside. That man looked at her with a face that had stopped managing itself, and what was there was simple and true, and everything the reputation had never been able to contain. "Yes," he said. "I think he did." She squeezed his hand. He squeezed back. Outside February moved over the lake in its cold, exact way. The city 30 miles south was doing what it always did. Complicated and loud and full of the ordinary human business of people trying to make their lives into something they could live with. Inside the kitchen on the North Shore, 2 people who had both spent years being the wrong version of themselves sat at a table with their hands together and let the morning be exactly what it was. Simple, real, enough. Isabella Romano had called the most feared man in Chicago from a bathroom floor at 12:17 in the morning with a dying phone and nowhere left to go. She had not been rescued. She had been met. And the difference between those 2 things, between a woman pulled from danger and a woman who reached through it towards something real and was reached back, was the entire story. That was what nobody outside the North Shore house would ever fully understand. The woman didn't call Adrian Valenti because she was helpless. She called him because she was the kind of person who, even at her lowest and most afraid, still reached. And he was the kind of man who 20 years into a story that could have gone differently at 100 junctures still answered. That was enough. That was everything. That was the whole story, and neither of them would have written it any other way.